You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
I'm Katrina, and I love anime.
I'm Steven, and I'm aware of anime.
But what if that affection could rub off?
Perhaps that excitement in her eyes got me curious.
I could offer up some solid anime.
I could give them a watch, just to see what all the fuss is about.
And maybe, just maybe,
I could learn to love anime too.
welcome to Inspired by a Weeaboo. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inspired by a Weeaboo. I am your host Katrina, and with me is my husband Steven.
Hello.
We just finished episode 30 of Fullmetal Alchemist. Steven, what did you think?
Looks like we're playing chess right now. We're setting up pieces, which I did, like. It didn't feel like filler or anything. It just seemed like we were positioning pieces for things to start moving forward. Mm-hmm. And that's what I kind of gleaned now. It had been a minute since we had watched some episodes, and I forgot about the boy who was in the last episode, and he was the one who Ed thinks stole his arm and leg.
Yes.
Because of the markings from the dog bite and fox bite. And then was it the leg color didn't match skin tone? Mm-hmm. So I had to take a moment to remember who the kid was, because I saw him and I was like, I should know him. But we had to stop just so she could remind me. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. That kid. So we kind of pick up, I guess, from where we left off last. Because, again, it's been a minute, so I had to kind of remember. So Ed's chasing after the boy. Mm-hmm. And he transmutes through a wall because he's got some wild-ass transmutation powers, it seems. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure what to call this thing, because at first I thought, was this another homunculi? Is it a witch or something? Because it's some little troll-looking creature, but apparently it's a chimera showed up to ask what they were doing, or to kind of get into Ed's head or whatever. In the moment, I can't remember the dialogue specifically, but meanwhile, we find that Armstrong and Archer have found where Ed and Al are, and they're just trying to track them down. Did they necessarily say what they were there for specifically? Because, I mean, I would assume to kind of fill them in on some stuff, but also because they know about the boy. Yeah,
they, I mean, they didn't say it in this episode, but they said it in, like, either the episode before or the episode before that. It was Archer, took over when, Hughes died. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of all in retrospect with that, like the whole investigation type thing into the homunculus and all of that. So they're just trying to track down Ed and Al.
Gotcha. And see, this is why it's so good to watch these back to back to back, because then I can have a clearer vision of what's going on versus watching them in spurts. But anyway, it's coming together. So what I got to say, one thing that I am kind of liking that they have not done yet, because this feels like in any other show or a lot of other shows, they would find a way to cut right to the chase, and they would have just dealt with it right then and there, mm-hmm. and felt like it would have undercut the moment. But Ed and Al still have no idea about Hughes, and there's never been, like, there was a moment where they could have slipped it in, but they didn't. They were just like, not right now. We'll get to it. And they kept moving. And I appreciate that, because in that moment, that's not the time. Yeah. Because it's going to hit them, or at least you would know more than I would, but I would assume it's going to hit them hard, and they need more moments than, hey, by the way, Hughes is dead, but we can't talk about that right now, so let's go. Mm-hmm. So they're not worried about that distraction. They're just, we're going to hang on to that until the appropriate time, and then we'll deal with it. But right now is not that moment. Yeah. So I appreciate that. I really do. Because I feel like a lot of other shows would not do that. But, so Armstrong meets, what's his name again? The husband? Does he have a name?
Yes, he has a name, and I can
just call
never
him
remember his freaking name.
The teacher's husband, the hubby, if
Let's
you will.
see.
Because he's just some big teddy bear. And
His name is Sig.
Sig. Okay, so Sig kind of I won't really say he kind of put his foot down or anything, but he's seeming kind of being protective of Ed now, obviously.
He definitely has the same, because he is definitely the strong, silent type.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Emphasis on silence. He is one of those people who he'll speak to you, but as far as anything that's like super in depth or personal, it's got to be in one of those instances where he, I guess feels like it would help people to understand.
Right.
But other than that, he just kind of keeps to himself. But he definitely has the exact same views as far as the military that his wife has. They don't trust it. They know that the military has done bad and continues to do bad versus the very small amount of good that they actually do.
Yeah. And I think that even becomes even more apparent by the end of the episode. But Armstrong decides he's gonna put the smack, or at least it seems like he's gonna put the smack down on this man. So he just like tears off his shirt and he just starts rippling his muscles, and then Sig does the same thing, and they just have like this flex off.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just like, look at my muscles, look at them, and then they just glisten at one another, just like respect for the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bro, you're just ripped, bro. It's like, yeah, bro, you're ripped. Oh, I just love your muscles, bro. Ugh. So this is sometimes the things this show does is humorous. It's not weird. It's just they take these little moments to find moments of levity and humor, and that was
which you will be very thankful for come closer towards the end of the series.
Sure.
You're gonna wish that they had more of those.
Which again, it's something I respect, doing that when you can. Don't shoehorn it in, because in those moments, I mean, we've seen Armstrong do things like that, so it didn't feel weird or out of place for either one of those characters to do that. So I appreciate that as well. So we go back to Ed and Al trying to track down the boy. Obviously, the Chimera, who I didn't ever catch a name for this one.
I don't think they have said his name yet.
Okay. But it's like a little lizardy troll-looking...
He is like a human lizard.
Yeah, it's a weird-looking thing. And they kind of chase it off, or it kind of runs off at some point, and they're trying to get back on the track of the boy, but before they do, Armstrong and Archer show up, and they're just like, hey, what are you guys doing here? And kind of have that moment. This is, again, that moment that I was talking about where I felt like they were going to bring up Hughes, but they didn't, because Ed was even like, oh, so you must know Hughes because you work in that same department. What are you guys doing here? And they kind of let it sit. And I was like, okay. So they're trying to go back after the boy. They find him sitting on top of a house or something like that. Goes to fall off. They grab him and save him, and then have a chat with him, just trying to clear the air, calm him down. And then Ed and Al kind of have a discussion about the limbs. Are we 100% sure this is what you think? How, and even poses the questions. How could he have gotten him? How would that even be possible? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs, and I think I understand where Ed's coming from.
Yeah.
If you saw that scar, sure.
Not even just the scar. Like, in that instance, that's the first time where you really see, because, like, when you first see the kid, you can tell, like, one arm's darker than the other. Almost like he has a tan on one arm and one leg, while the rest of him is, like, super Irish pale.
Yeah.
And in that scene, it's the first time where you see, like, the true difference in it when he has his palms up and he's looking at both of his arms. like his actual arm is so tiny, like it matches the rest of his body. Like his hand's really small. But then you look at the other arm and it's almost twice the size of his normal arm. Like you can look at it and be like, something doesn't look right.
So when as they are kind of discussing this out, hashing it out and trying to come to an understanding, because the question does get brought up, what are you going to do? If you're 100% sure. So during that time, Archer and Armstrong are kind of looking from the ground level and notice a marking on the boy's foot and decide that they have to bring him in because he is a homunculi who may have answers that they need about Lab 5. So they want to bring him in for questioning. And it did seem a little odd having Armstrong attack, because then the boys are just like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? Felt like that was kind of toward them, but grab the boy, go to take him off, say, hey, this is what we're up to, this is what we're doing, so you're just going to have to bow this one out. And they even kind of stop Armstrong to be like, hey, dude, what the fuck? You know, this is, we're kind of dealing with this, what are you going to do? And then they even mentioned the arm and the leg to Armstrong and what the suspicions are. And that's when the question gets posed. What are you going to do? If you are absolutely 100% right, and that is your arm and that is your leg, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to just tear them off, re-sew them back to your body? What are you going to do? And yeah, what happens to the boy? So it's a very valid question in this moment. What are you going to do? Because initially, Ed is... I can see where he's coming from. The irrationality of that moment. Holy shit, you've got my arm and my leg. I'm going to get it back. But long term, in that moment, you're not thinking about that. And that is a very valid question. And I don't see Ed doing that.
No, I think, like, it definitely, obviously he wants his arm and his leg back. But I think it also boils down to, if he can prove that that is his arm and that is his leg, that means that their chances of getting Al's body back went from like 5% to like 90%.
Sure.
They know that there is a way to retrieve what was lost through the gate. They just have to figure out how the child was able to get it.
Right. So we kind of get, after they get that what if scenario, we kind of go back to the secretary, and this is where I was talking about chess pieces moving, because she's on the phone with someone having a little back and forth. It's some little squirrely dude who I don't remember. Have we seen him before? I couldn't remember if we'd seen him.
Yes. I was going to ask you while we were watching it if you recognized him.
He seemed familiar, but I could not put my finger on it.
Yes. Way back towards the beginning of the series, when Ed and Al went to that mining town where they chucked him out of the inn because, they were, military dogs.
And that's
He's the one that was running it.
And that's why she said, I could get you back in the military. Okay, yeah, all right.
Yep, that was that little weasel.
Gotcha. So, yeah, all right. So the secretary's talking to him, and apparently he's up to no good as usual, because why wouldn't he be? Because that's the kind of person he is. And then we cut to another group, and are they all homunculi in this little thug group? Or was it just the main guy? Because they never quite specified.
The main guy is one of the homunculi.
Yeah.
He knows, obviously, the other homunculi. He knows lust and greed and envy and gluttony. The other ones are chimeras, which you'll see more of their actual chimera forms, because unlike the lizard one, they look more human.
And that's why I was curious, because it did seem like there were too many numbers for there to be more homunculi.
Yes.
But they didn't look like chimera, so that's why I was.
And the other one that went with the lizard chimera is one of the ex-military who was in that prison when
okay.
Ed and Al, were trying to retrieve the Philosopher's Stone.
Right.
He is also one of them that they have mentioned it, but it was kind of in like a quick flashback type thing. He was one of the military dogs during the Ishbalan War.
Okay. So there's a lot of dealings going on. Like they're trying to discuss what they're going to do. They're going to go after the boy because they feel like he's also special.
Yes.
Homunculi that can do alchemy. So that's interesting and intriguing to them.
And you also saw who else was with him, right? The one in the trench coat.
Well, I wasn't sure who that was.
You didn't recognize the voice?
I was curious. Again, this has been a minute. I was trying to figure out who that was, and I did make a note that there was some mysterious person lurking in the shadows, kind of in the conversation, but didn't really say much, and the voice did sound somewhat familiar, but don't tell me if it'll show it later.
I mean, they will show
surprised.
him again, but I feel like you should have recognized him because you made a point to point out his appearance the last time we saw him. Come on,
again,
who would be with chimeras?
The one weird little dude?
No.
Yeah,
Who
'cause
made
he's
chimeras, Steven? He's an asshole who we both hated.
I don't know. Again, I can't remember a lot of my memory.
Names.
Yeah, names and if it. Oh, that fucker. Okay.
Yes, that is Tucker.
Well,
who
you could've
also
just let that mystery sit, so I could be like, oh shit, this guy again.
It's definitely been a while since we watched it because, oh my god, we literally saw him leave with all of them.
Yeah. Again, you could have let that just sit and
Never.
let me stew on it.
Nope.
Because I like being surprised, and you like spoiling surprises.
I haven't spoiled several surprises.
Anyway, so their plan is to go get the boy. Does he have a name?
He technically has a name, but I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. Then
He does not have like in the name of like how your name is Steven, my name is Katrina type name.
You're starting to open it up. Let it sit.
Okay, I'm letting it sit.
Okay, I
I
don't
told
want to
you I
know. I
wouldn't
don't
tell
want to
you.
know. So the boys, they're talking to the teacher about the brothers are talking to their teacher about
Yes.
the boy, whose name is unknown at this point in time, and kind of expressing their concerns about the kid in general, also letting them know that he's been captured. But, I mean, Frank just outright says, he's a monster, and that pisses off their teacher.
Yeah.
So she kind of defends the boy, and I guess the stress of it all sends her into one of her fits or her side effect.
She coughs up a shit ton of blood.
A lot, to the point where she has to go lay down and just try to recoup. And then, of course, Winry, I think this is the first time she's really witnessed it.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts questioning it, and she's like, hey, why don't we take her to the hospital? We got to do something because, something's wrong. She doesn't know the truth. Doctor even comes in and says, hey, there's not much we can do because she's missing all these organs. Now, at this point, that's when the brothers are starting to put two and two together about what she's done. Granted, they don't have the full picture, but I'm sure they could put the puzzle pieces together.
I feel like they basically have the puzzle put together. They just want the definite yes or no answer.
Right. Because they know what she can do, just the same as Ed can do.
Yep.
And now they have they have proof as to why that is the case. Just like you said, definitive answers, yes or no, and all that.
Yeah.
But Winry actually gets to hear the full story through Sig.
Well, the beginning up to probably the middle of the story. We haven't seen the rest of it.
Okay, but she has enough to kind of be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So she tried to revive the kid or the baby, and she comes back with nothing on the inside, which that's another interesting aspect the doctor did kind of mention, is that as she lost all that other stuff, the rest of her body kind of repaired itself in some way to be like, all right, well, we got to figure this out to kind of keep her moving and kind of keep her together without all these organs. So it kind of restructured her system to stay alive, just with some bad side effects. But she goes after the boy in the military compound, as does the homunculi. And she wastes no time in just like tearing up all the military soldiers inside. No shit's given. Just like bang, bang, just get out of my way. She finds the boy, grabs him, starts to head out. And Ed and Al run to her assistance, trying to help, or I guess they're helping. I guess that was their intent. And then
it's one of those where she's put, especially Edward, in a kind of between a rock and a hard place, because like he said, I'm still the military.
Right.
Like, I can't just let you leave with that child. I can't let you do what you're doing, even though I understand it and I love you. I don't want to fight you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Archer and Armstrong, and then who else shows up?
Oh, Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, he always seems to show up at these interesting points in the story. I'm really starting to wonder about this man.
And he's always all smiles and soft-spoken.
Never a care in the world, because even as they got stopped, or the sensei and the boys got stopped by the homunculi who broke in, and then their backs are then covered by Armstrong and Archer, Bradley shows up, and he's just like,
And in that instant, that's one of the things, like, because, you know, you always kind of pay attention, especially when Bradley is there. And, like, Edward makes a comment, I guess it's going to be a 4-way fight, meaning he's going to have to fight Armstrong and them off, his teacher off, as well as the homunculi and, what's his face? I can't ever remember his name. But the other guy who's now with the homunculi.
Yeah.
But when Bradley walks up, he says, I guess, you know, with me or whatever, we'll make, or it's a 5-way.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's not even going to be on anybody's side. He's fighting for whatever in the fuck he wants.
So that's where they kind of leave that moment. And then we bounce to Bradley. I guess this is more like a flashback prior to him being there, showing that he found out where Scar is and has sent Mustang to go after Scar. And Scar is now in one of these Ishbalan settlements, trying to blend in.
It wasn't technically an Ishbalan settlement. It is a settlement for people who were, like they said, it's for people who were kicked out of their homes. There's a lot of refugees there, just from, you know, the local cities and towns and shit where stuff has been happening, especially with the military. There's a lot of deserters from the military who were there, and that's why they accepted the Ishbalans, because they know that they are persecuted against, just like all of these other people have, you know, kind of been persecuted against. Even though obviously not all of them are good, because you got the little Weasley ass who was there who, you know, told on them.
Yeah.
Which is one of those, like, I can remember when I watched this episode, and it always sticks with me because I'm just like, you know, bringing the military to where you're hiding out with all these other fucking people, that just shows how selfish you are. Because you know, like he just said Scar's there. He didn't say that it was an entire fucking town of people or an entire, you know, community of Ishbalans or anything like that. It's just, hey, here's Scar. And like Mustang said, you know, they want to go in and they want to do it. He wants to do it to where there's no casualties. He doesn't want to go in there guns a-blazing and mow everybody down. But we also know how the military deals with people, especially people who are against the military.
Right.
So it just shows how fucking selfish that little weasel is, because he didn't give a fuck about anybody else in that entire fucking camp who helped him survive. And instead, he's literally bringing the military down on people who have been ostracized from the military.
Right.
Or by the military.
So while we get that information about Scar, we overhear Scar talking about some other person that he happens to notice.
Yep.
And some person standing in the food line or whatever he's talking to asks about this person because he had some marking on his face or something like that, from what I remember. And then the local just tells him, he's like, hey, I wouldn't mess with that guy. He's he's in Ishbal in exile because he didn't follow the way and what have you. So just pretty much stay away from him. He's not worth your time.
He committed sins against Ishbala.
There you go. So, that Scar is not the type of person to be like, oh, okay. So he gets curious.
Well, he knows what the sins are because the only sins against him, Ishbala, is alchemy.
So he decides to go follow this man and goes into their tent, or I guess where the guy wound up or was going, and finds a bunch of markings all over the wall. And then there was one in particular that they ended on that seemed to be like, dun, dun, dun. What that is, should I know?
I mean, you've seen these symbols several times before. You just might not have really paid attention to them.
Sure.
But yes, they have significant meaning, especially to Scar.
Okay. So whatever that symbol was, he got really, really, I don't know.
He was like, kind of like shocked to see it.
Yeah. So he was a little taken aback by it. So I'm assuming whoever this guy is going to play into the story a little bit more as things go on. Like I said, this was a chess board situation where there were a lot of things happening. Nothing really progressed forward. A little bit, but not a whole lot. But it seems like we're setting the stage for something to happen. Something bigger is about to go down.
I feel like this episode, and there's definitely going to be more, but this episode you kind of see those friendships that Ed and Al have made kind of starting to tear at the seams. Because obviously Edward and Al are never going to do anything that's going to ultimately hurt their teacher or, her family or the town or anything like that. But especially when it comes to like Major Armstrong, like when Armstrong started attacking, that was one of the things that you pointed out. It's one of those things where it comes back to like what Ed said. He's still part of the military. And therefore Armstrong, he might be a major, but that's not that high up.
Sure.
And you still have to follow orders. If you don't follow orders, something's going to happen. So I feel like this episode's definitely one of those that just kind of starts the fraying for this nice little comfort bubble that Ed and Al have been living in with all the people around them, because shit's just kind of getting to that boiling point.
And that's a fair assessment, because a lot of things have happened that would be fraying those relationships over the past couple of episodes. And now, like I said, again, Armstrong has always been on their side, and then he didn't necessarily attack them, but he kind of undercut what they were trying to do, all because of orders. And they really don't know Archer, so immediately he can be viewed as an enemy.
Well, they definitely, because they did comment on one of the earlier episodes when you first see Archer, that they know about his background, and it's like a very spotty as far as what would you call it, moral? It's morally spotty.
Okay.
So, and as you can kind of see, because when they did take the child, I was expecting you to make a comment about it, but they literally had him strapped down on a table, butt ass naked, strapped down, like they were. To me, that's not just, they were obviously weren't going to talk to him. It was more like experimentation.
That was what I kind of took from it, is that's what they were planning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they misled.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Archer, definitely. Armstrong, he probably had no idea what was going on until it got to that point. But again, he can't really speak out about it because him nor any of the people he trusts are anywhere high enough to speak out about it. But
and, I never look at Armstrong as someone who's going to betray the boys. I always feel like he kind of in this scenario was in that rock and hard place bit where he had orders to follow. He didn't know, like, it was just hands are tied. He didn't want to do any harm to them, but it wasn't to them, but he knew it was going to affect them based on what they were doing. So yeah,
he knows there's a bigger picture going on, and Ed and Al are so, like, they have tunnel vision. Once they get their eyes set on something, that's the only thing that they focus on. That's the only thing that they care about. Where Armstrong, because he's friends with Colonel Mustang and the rest of, the good people in the military, he knows shit is wrong and things are going bad. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like he definitely becomes like, I mean, he's already a really good person, but he becomes an even better person in the sense of he does his best to protect Ed and Al from everything. But when it comes down to it, and, like this episode where he has to kind of stand against them, he's willing to do it. And it's nothing against Ed and Al. It's literally for, like, the greater good. Like, he needs to stay where he is the same way Mustang treats Ed and Al the way that he does. It's, nothing, like, they're not a scapegoat. But if it comes to him being able to climb the ladder and get higher in the military, or him protecting them and staying where he's at, he's going to do everything to climb that ladder because that's what's going to get him to the greater good.
Right. So here we are at the end of this episode.
Yes.
I don't really know what else to say about it. So I guess we'll move on because I'm curious to see where this is heading.
Yeah, because there are so many more players now. Like, you have, because obviously, like we said, we had Ed and Al. Now you have Izumi on the board because she's going to want to protect the child. And you have the military. And you have the homunculi. And you now have the chimeras that are working with one homunculi. Because if you notice the way that the one was talking, which they haven't said his name, and I keep having to, like, tell myself not to say his name. The one that's with the homunculi. Anyway, he isn't with, like, the way that he's speaking, he isn't with the other homunculi. Because, like he said, we need to get the boy, and he means we as in the people who are in that room with him.
Right.
And we know from the episode where they were in the laboratory, the homunculi don't want anything to do with him, and Gluttony especially almost seems terrified of him because he always says, like, that man or, the bad one.
Oh, this is the one that was in the prison cell that got... Okay.
The one that was in the big prison cell that was,
it was just
all
like a
covered.
Fleeting moment they had in the episode where it was just like, he got out. And you're like, all right.
Yep.
Guess that'll come back into play. Okay, well, then let's press forward. So,
yes,
everybody, you know the drill. If you've got friends who love anime, you tell them to go listen to this podcast on their favorite podcasting platform. And they can also go to youtube.com/pencilpaper productions to listen to this podcast. Seems like a lot of people are listening to it over there, I've noticed. It's interesting. A lot. It's a half and half thing I can't keep up with. Because podcast stats on YouTube are not the same as podcast stats where everyone else listens. So I got half here, half there. I don't understand it. It's weird. But wherever you want to listen, it doesn't matter. You go listen wherever is comfortable for you. And if you just want to go to a central hub, you can go to pencilpaperproductions.com/inspiredweeaboo. And that's where you can keep up with all the things. And finally, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions.
Before we cut out my little weebs, I do want to give one shout out because I have gotten a little bit of feedback from my sister who has watched every single episode of our podcast from the very first episode. And I'm not talking about just this season. I mean, How many seasons have we done?
We're on 3.
3. Haha. So all 3 seasons, every single episode. Thank you, my sister Kimberly. I love you. And to all of my other weebs who have watched all of our episodes or even just one whole season, thank you so much for your support. And we love you, and we will see you next time.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.